Hey everyone, welcome to the Good News Podcast. Today's episode is it's a Mother's Day episode in many ways. We just believed it was the right time to lift up the role of moms, the role of women in our world today, and I couldn't think of anyone better to have this conversation with. This is a conversation with Tasha Bhoodai. Tasha wears many hats. She plays different roles in her home, in the community, and I think you are going to be incredibly inspired by this conversation. She talks about, in a very real way, the challenges of juggling all of these things, but does it in such a beautiful way. I was really grateful for the way that she talked about the role of God in her life and how her faith really enables, empowers, helps her live into all that she needs to do. The idea of grace came up, which you can't talk enough about grace. Friends, I think you're going to be really encouraged by this episode. Let's dive in. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us on the Good News Podcast today. And we have someone who is a very good friend of mine, part of our church here at NBUC, and both a leader in her home and in her community. And Tasha, just so glad to have you on the podcast today, and really excited about this conversation.
I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah,
awesome. I'm really excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
For sure. Well, as an introduction, you have a number of different roles that you play in life these days, and one certainly is being a mom.
Yes.
So tell us, let's dive into that. Like, tell us about what it's like to be a mom these days from your experience, some of the challenges, some of the joys, and then, we'll kind of get into how do you do that and work outside the home as well in a role that's really a significant role that you play in this community. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I have to say that my role as mom is by far the best. And when I think about the legacy I leave behind when my life is over, those 3 kids are what I look to as that piece of me carrying on in my life. And it's such a significant part of who I am that it's something that I want to make sure I'm doing the right thing, And so when we talk about motherhood, the big thing that comes to mind for me is the weight of that. There's a significant weight, I think, that as mothers we carry. And from my experience, that's been how I have felt. And, with mothering, just wanting to make sure that I'm doing the best I can, and I'm planting seeds in these little people that are going to grow into something beautiful, and that they're going to grow in the right way and in the right direction. And I think it's a funny time as people because we have a lot of differences in how in which we were raised. And my husband and I, Ryan, talk about this a lot, that we're really the first generation of parents that have social media as part of our life. Yeah. And when we look at mothering, that's been a really interesting component of being a mom. And it can be a blessing and not so much a blessing at the same time. It's kind of like this way of looking into other people's lives and the expectations that you might have on yourself as a mom. And there's this comparison game that can happen sometimes that can make you feel like you're not, adding up to what everyone else is doing. And I think that's one of the beautiful things that I love so much about having God in my life is because it helps to turn away from what I might think that I want or need as a mother versus what God really wants me to do in my life. And when I think about the joys of motherhood, there are a lot of sacrifices at the same time. There's sacrifices of your body, of your time, of your sleep, of your identity, of who you were before you were a parent, you know? And it's really a funny pairing, really, of this joy and also overwhelm all at the same time.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't think there's ever been an experience I've had where you get kind of thrown into life at such warp speed, and it's either sink or swim,
For sure.
And I think that's beautiful and hard
Yeah,
all at the
yeah.
same time,
Yeah.
you
No,
know?
every once in a while I hear someone talk about becoming a parent. They're planning it and
Yeah.
they're hitting in that season of their life. And once in a while I'll hear people say, oh, we're going to become parents, but everything's going to stay the same. Nothing's
Right.
going to change. I'm like, oh, just wait. And I'm not saying it's bad, but it changes.
That's
It's
wishful
different. Like you
thinking.
said, there's lots of
Yeah.
change, sacrifice, those kinds of things.
Yeah.
Maybe Tasha, just how old your kids are. I
Sure.
realize it would be helpful for people to know that. And then love to hear a little bit about, you mentioned about getting it right and not getting it right. I think it'd be fun to be real about with that, because I think we all live in that world of some days you feel like you got it all together, and you have these moments where I rock, man.
Yeah,
And then some days you have those days where oh no,
really suck.
I hope I'm not destroying them, kind of thing. So it's just the ages of your kids, and it's just the gamut of experiences on that roller coaster ride of what it feels like sometimes to be a mom.
Yes, we have 3, like I said, and our oldest is 11. She's our only daughter. And then we have 2 sons, and our middle one is 9, and our youngest one is 4. He'll be 5 in June this year, which is bananas because I feel like, I was just pregnant with Noah when I kind of first started coming here. Yeah. So it's been cool to him to kind of be around here so long. So the funny thing about those ages is that our daughter's kind of moving into teenagehood, preteen time. Yeah. So as soon as this is the kind of funny thing about parenthood, is that you think that you've got it all sorted out, right? And then they flip it on you, and then I don't know what I'm doing again. That happens as they're babies, and then each stage they go through, and then, you kind of think that you got it all together, and then something changes. So we're going through that season now where things are starting to change for her a little bit, and trying to navigate that, But in all of this, I think that when we're parents, and especially in mothering, everything is rooted in love and rooted in what you want is the best for your kids. But life happens, right? And we go through ebbs and flows of trials, and times that are really good and really high, and then times that are really low, really low. And so I worry a lot about, am I doing enough? Am I giving them enough of my time? Am I investing enough in even small things like their reading, in their ability to do their own laundry? Am I planting the seeds I'm supposed to at the right time? Am I being too hard on them? Am I being too loose on things? Are they respecting me enough? Or how are they going to be as parent? All the big questions,
every
right?
Day,
all the big questions. And it's heavy to carry that load. And it can be really overwhelming. And when I had our our oldest 2, God wasn't in my life at all. And so to compare my life now with carrying all of those worries versus when I had the other 2 and I didn't have God in my life at all, it's remarkable the weight that God lifts with that for me. And how much he is a part of my life as a mother, and how he's really guiding me through it. And when I worry about all of those things, sometimes I joke and say, what are some of the things they're going to say that mom really did to mess me up? We all are human.
For sure.
And we all make mistakes, and we all have moments where we didn't do so good, or we didn't say the thing in the right way, or we maybe talked too loud, or maybe we got too angry over something, It's just life. It's just the way life is. And when I have those moments, I used to feel really, really low about them. And now when I wonder if I'm doing okay, I just pray about that. And when I don't have answers for things, when the kids come to me with these big life questions, I'll say, that's a great question. We should ask God about that, because I don't know,
Yeah.
And so he's kind of in the journey with me, which feels really comforting, really comforting.
Love to hear more about that, because I think some people wonder, okay, how do you include God in your life? How do you include God, in this case, in your role as a mom, as a parent? And what does that look like? What kinds of things do you do to try to open yourself up to God? What does that look like? And then maybe even a little bit more on on the impact that that has on you. Mentioned about the worry, but
Mm.
what are some of the other ways that by opening up your life to God,
Mhm.
you just find, as you said, you parent differently than
Yeah.
you had before that. Yeah.
Well, I think God's just a part of our home environment.
Mm,
We talk about God a
mm,
lot. And when things come up, like I said, and we don't know what to do, we talk about how we pray about those things and God guides the way.
mm,
And the interesting thing about me being like a newer Christian
mm,
and the kids, we're kind of on equal playing fields in our faith
mm.
because I'm so new in that and they're kind of growing along with me. And so I talk about some of the things that, mommy doesn't know the answer to those things. And I don't really know how we should go about doing this, but I know we can talk to God about anything. And we don't have to ask in a very specific way. We just
Mm,
talk to him like he's a person, like
mm,
he loves us. Just tell him how you feel.
mm,
And so that's what I kind of model for them. And then I have seen moments where our middle son, Grayson in particular, has really picked up on that. And there's been times I've walked into his room and he'll be up on, like leaning up on his bed praying.
mm,
And it's just like, wow, that's so
mm,
cool. That's so
mm,
cool. Um, and
mm.
so with having those conversations, it just really normalizes that
Yeah.
as part of their life. And those are the things I hope carry on with them far beyond when I'm not here anymore,
Mm, mm,
And, a simple way to explain how that has become part of our life is, I recently got into school, which was really exciting, but also a really big decision and one where this whole guilt and worry really
mm.
popped up for me because I felt like it was the right time. But my kids are young. What if this takes me away from them too much? What if what they remember of this time is that mommy wasn't there for me and I really needed her? And so I was worried that, is this the right time? Is this a selfish decision? Is this good for our family? Um, and it's funny how, we met about
Mhm.
this whole
Yeah.
thing, but it's funny how when you pray about those things and people come into your life to kind of help guide you in the right direction and doors open and doors close.
Mm,
And, it's about being able to recognize what's going on.
mm.
And then I just talk to the kids about how that's happening in my own life to help them to notice those
Wow.
things within their own. But the weight of parenting, it's just, I think it can really crush you if
Mhm,
you don't have a support or if you don't have God in your life or if you don't have something you lean on
mhm,
because the decisions are so monumental and so big and important. And it's hard to
mhm,
carry that all. If you're a single mother, that's a whole other dynamic to
mhm,
everything you have to carry. If you're going through mental illness at the same time while mothering, which has been
mhm,
an experience of mine, and if you
mhm,
don't have support in that, that's even worse,
mhm,
right? Because
mhm.
there's elements of you where you're struggling so much yourself and then having to care for and invest in other people when you're kind of drowning on
Mhm,
your own.
mhm,
So having God in my life with all of
mhm,
this has helped like a raft
mm.
in a busy
That's
bit of
awesome.
water, you
Keeping
know?
you afloat,
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
exactly.
No.
It doesn't make the ride less bumpy,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it keeps me afloat.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That's awesome. And what I'm hearing too is it impacts how you enter into all of that because
Yeah.
it's going to be there. It's going to be busy. It's going to be intense. It's going to be hard, lots of days. But how do you live within that? I love how naturally you're sharing God with your family. Just thinking
Yeah.
it. You talk about legacy earlier on, and they're going to
Yeah.
have their own decisions to make.
Mhm.
They do already. It doesn't matter what age we are, but as we get older, they get even bigger. And for them to
Mhm.
have modeled for them you coming to God, to prayer, to look for some help and support and guidance with those decisions.
Mm.
I can just imagine them one day doing that as well, hopefully. And what
I
a
hope
great
so.
seeds that you're planting, for
Yeah.
not just today, but for the future. It's awesome. I'm one thing I'm curious about is how you yourself spend time with God, because being a young mom, I can imagine that there's lots going on in your house most days, and
Yes.
yeah. And I
Yeah.
think I hear that as a challenge for all of us because life is so busy. But particularly when we have young kids in particular, it can be even more challenging. And just so, what does that look like as far as your life with God? How do you live into that on a daily or weekly or whatever basis? However, what does that look? Yeah, 'cause that's so. I think such a challenge for people.
Yeah. And I will say, to be totally transparent,
Yeah,
there's been periods where I'm not checking in
Yeah.
with God, and I'm noticing that I'm far away from him. And then there's times where I feel like he's right there, and I feel like he's so present in my life, and that things that are happening, like he's guiding me almost like I'm on something and he's just pushing me along, which feels really nice. And then other times where I feel like, are you there?
Yeah. Yeah. Like I'm dragging God along with me.
Do you even care?
Yeah.
So there's times where I have had moments like that for sure. And I go through like ebbs and flows of different ways that I connect. There was a period of time where I loved to do Bible journaling. And there's been other times where I've been really focused on worship music. And so I would have those things on while I was thinking about stuff, and just having God present in around us, coming to church has been a huge component of that for me and for us. So during the pandemic, that was really hard for me, of just having that distance, So it's been so nice being able to come back in person. And I think that's important for the kids too, when we talk about modeling, having God in our life, being able to be present is so cool. And like I said, there's times where I just talk aloud. The one really cool thing I love about our church is that there's not this push to have this, structured way of speaking to God. Just come to him as you are, And that was really comforting for me, because before I felt really conflicted. Like, am I supposed to kneel a certain way? Am I supposed to say a salutation in a certain way? Do I have to end it in a certain way? And sometimes it's just like chatting with a friend, or like split moments where I'm going to do something and I'm starting to feel really worried about it or nervous. And then I'll just be like, man, God, you got to have my back. You got to have my back. I don't know what to say. Please give me the words, or something comes up for the kids. Then we'll just say something quick to kind of just have God present in the moment. But then there's times when I'm not doing that, So, but I will say is that when God enters those things, it's a whole lot easier. It's a whole lot easier. Yeah.
Cool. Oh, thanks, Tasha. That's awesome. There's another piece that's really huge in your life as far as your work life. Working in the social work field, it can be very demanding from a time perspective, but also from an emotional, energy perspective. And so I think it'd be really helpful to hear how do you juggle all of that? How do you manage that, your role as a mom, your role in outside of the home as far as in the workforce, as in the social work area? How do you juggle that? How do you manage that? And
I haven't always managed it well, to be honest, and it's taken time to create some boundaries. Not just about my own time, but even boundaries around my heart, around my own space, my own person. It's an art that I think a lot of people that go into the helping field have to learn, and I think you go into that profession because you want to help people so much, but you also have to fill yourself up too and take care of yourself, because you can't help others if you're not doing well. And if I'm not investing my time in my own kids, how can I go off and feel good about investing so much time in other people's children, So, I work primarily with families, and kids are always part of those families that I work with. And there's been times, and Ryan and I do similar work. And so he works with kids too. And so we often worry, at some point, will our kids say, you were gone so much and you did so much with other people's kids and you aren't here for us? That's not something they've ever said to us, but it's these worries you have, right? About like, is that going to be what they remember? And so it's been about figuring out where is my time when I'm there? And then when I'm home, I'm just mom, and it's about kind of taking off that hat and that recognizing that I'm not the only one that's in that family's life. And, for me, I am the only one here. For them, I'm their only mom, and that they need to be my priority. And there's been times where I've had to take off work because the kids have needed me, and knowing that that's a priority, they come first, before anything else. And just being able to figure out how to balance my time to be most efficient. And, when I'm away from home, that makes sure that when I am home, my time with them is valued, right? Like my time with them is important, and that we're doing things that are fostering connection and family and love and attention. And there has been times where my work has been emotionally really difficult, and it has impacted me. And when I would come home, it's like I had nothing left just because something was really hard that I saw or that I did, or something that, an interaction I had. And I'm just honest about those things. The kids know what I do for work, but they don't entirely understand, right? Because they're kids. But I'll just say, mommy had a really sad day, or mommy had a really hard conversation with someone and they were really sad, or that made me feel really sad. And, sometimes when we feel that way, you need a little bit of space, and mommy needs to lie in bed for a couple hours tonight, or, like I can't go to the park today, but I will do it on X and X day, and just, I think honesty with our kids, they know way more than we give them credit for.
Yeah.
And sometimes if you just tell them a version of the truth that's appropriate for them and their age, they get it. They love you. They want to make sure you're okay too. And sometimes when we model those things, it helps them to learn how to have boundaries, and that it's okay to have bad days, and it's okay to have rest days, and that we don't need to go all the time. And, mommy's not perfect. Mommy's human just like them,
I love the transparency with them, the honesty with them, just to name, hey, it was a rough day, and I just don't have it in me to do some of the things that we might normally do tonight. And that's what do you do when you've reached that point? Because sometimes it could be from parenting, sometimes it could be from work. But especially when you've got both of those things going on, in your life at such a significant level, we can reach that depleted time where I just don't have anything left. What do you do? What's helpful for you, Tasha, to kind of refill, to really get healthy again, or be more fully energized?
So I think the interesting thing with me is that part of my work is to help people cope with stuff. And it took me a really long time to take my own advice,
Yeah.
So
it's good for them.
I try to take my own advice.
Cool.
And we all have people that wrap around us that love us. And so in those moments, I reach out to them. We talk about how I'm doing, and if I need help with anything, or if I need help with the kids. And when the kids were really young, like our oldest two are only 21 months apart, which is really hard.
Wow. Yeah.
It is really hard. And there were times when I would just be at a breaking point, that you would just in a crib and I'd go into the bathroom and I'd have a cry, and then I'd come out and start anew, Like sometimes you just have to have a reset of figuring out. There's like the pressures when the kids are really young is really different. The pressures when they're a little older. Now that they're a little older, I can kind of give them something to do and say, mommy needs like a little bit of a break, But I think reaching out to the people that you trust and that love you and that are there to support you, to talk about what's on your heart and what you're struggling with is so important. And then, like I was saying before, like those are the moments that you say to God, like, I'm drowning right now. Like, I need you to help me out. I can't do this if you don't help me here. And that's a big conversation that I had with God when I was coming back from a break that I was on for work. And I said, if you want me here, if this is where I'm supposed to be, then you need to help me out. Like, you need to help me have space and time to be present within my home, because that is so important to me. And you need to protect my heart, and you need to protect me when I go out there, and bring the people into my life that you know that I'm at their service to help them. And if this is where you want me to be, I had a hard conversation with him. I said, this is what I need. And it was helpful. And when those times are hard, then I say to him, hey, man, you're not keeping up with your bargain. This is hard right now.
And so what happens for you? What happened in that experience where he said, hey, this is supposed to happen, then I'm going to need your help. And so what happened for you out of that prayer, out of that experience?
I don't know how to explain it, Jamie. It's like he parted water for me.
Wow.
And that sounds magical and unreal. It really does. But I swear he has found a way to make it so that I feel safe in my work, so that the people that are coming into my life, I have a purpose there. There has been moments where I've been introduced to people, and that's not being something that, is safe because we live too close to home or whatever it is, right? And something has shifted and moved. Relationships have changed. Even something as simple as someone was hired to sit beside me, and we became the best of friends. And having her come into my life, that in and of itself was like a life raft in the water. Like, when I was having a hard time, she'd be there for me, vice versa.
Awesome.
He brought people into my life to keep me afloat. And when I had really hard things go on, people would come and they'd help me, and I would do the same for them. It was like a community wrapped around me. And I don't know if I never noticed it before. And it was just this, thing that came off my eyes, and I saw the world in a different way. But I swear it was not like that when I didn't have God in my life. And so I don't know how to put it into words.
Yeah, well, I think you just did a really good job of it,
Thanks,
to be honest.
I tried.
Yeah, no, that was amazing. Yeah, maybe sometimes even seeing things that were already there, but you just didn't notice them. I think God sometimes awakens us to what's already there sometimes, eh? And there's, if you will, almost miraculous, life-changing, transformative activity just in that. Yeah.
Well, you make an interesting point, because I think when I try to articulate how God has helped me in parenthood, I think it's very much centered around that I'm not alone.
Okay.
I'm not alone in raising my kids. I'm not alone in my work outside the home. I'm not alone in these big life choices I need to make. Like, he is there guiding me through it all. And so when I need someone, he will bring someone to me. If I don't have the words to speak, he will help me find the right ones. He'll kind of guide me when I'm going off path, and he gives me this sense of peace and comfort that, if you make mistakes, I'll forgive you in that. And, my children are not just mine. They're his ultimately, and I'm here to help guide them in their life. And he's helping me do that, And he loves them far beyond I ever could, And same with me. He loves me beyond anyone ever could. So how's he going to steer me wrong?
Oh, yeah. That's awesome. The word grace is coming up as you're talking. Yeah. Right. That grace with ourselves, grace from God, grace with one another.
Yeah. Very much.
Absolutely.
Very much.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
It is really cool. It is really cool. Really cool. The idea of grace extends, I think, to each other as well. We can be representatives of God, if you will, and sharing that grace in providing space for people to be supported and strengthened. And I'm thinking, as we're talking about being a mom, being in leadership and in the workforce, just doing what you need to do, like day in, day out, week in, week out. My sense is there is, for whatever reason, right or wrong, more I would say wrong, but maybe, I don't know, I just want to be careful how I say this, but there's a difference sometimes for men and women, and the expectations. And so I guess the idea of grace is, I'd like to ask, how can we all be human together? How can we support moms, who are trying to juggle and make it work in a way that maybe we all don't have to for whatever reason. How can we support our partners in ways that just help provide grace through us?
Yeah.
I'd love to maybe hear a bit about that. And I think, we all hopefully have our open ears and hearts, and how can we live into this together? Yeah.
Well, that's a pretty big question. So I don't have all the answers to that, but I think that there needs to be an acknowledgement of the history of women and what women have had to endure for a really long time. And even with, even in today's age, there's this understanding of women going out into the workforce and working outside the home, but there's this idea of like still work within the home, and that sometimes that's not equally divvied up, and that in a lot of ways, even now, like the mental load of motherhood is significant, even simple things like, moms are normally the ones that remember the birthdays and getting the presents for people and creating the magic in holidays and remembering the last time the kids went to the dentist and when was the last time they got the needles done. All of that creates space that is taken up in the brain, right? And takes away from our ability to have space to do other things and just the freedom to be able to have our own identity, have our own things that we're interested in. And even simple things like sleep, right? Like being the ones to wake up, especially if you're nursing a baby. And, sleep psychosis is a real thing, Jamie. Like I remember you doing a sermon and saying that you took some of the kids off to the coffee shop when they were young so that Katrina could sleep at home. And I was like, those are the simple things that make such a huge difference. And that's the way you show love, and that's the way you show grace, right? Or bringing a meal to someone that has been having a hard time, or when they have a new baby. And I think something we've lost along the way is that there's this idea that like as soon as moms have their kids, that they can just get off and get moving and get on with life, and that she very much needs to be mothered herself in that time, in that season of her life, right? And that we used to be in big communities where we'd all support each other. And now when everyone's working, no one's home during the day, and it can be lonely in those moments, So I think understanding how far we have come, which is amazing, it is amazing. The life my grandmother would talk about is very different than the life I have today. And my daughter's life will be very different than the one that I grew up in, right? Like there's huge strides that we have made that is like incredible. But there's still things that have carried on from the past that are still a challenge, like women are held back in a lot of ways because of the weight of that. And so I think bringing it into the light is a helpful thing. And having those moments to care for each other and to support each other. And when women don't have a community, that we wrap around them so that they're not alone, right? Because there's a piece where God guides us and we don't feel alone in that. But there's a big portion of us as humans being able to wrap around people too. That's so important, And so, and I think a big one too is just finding out like, how are moms really doing, And that's where I talk about this social media being difficult, because it's like a big keeping up with the Joneses, right? Like if you're struggling as a mom and then you go online and everyone's got this pristine life with these white kitchens and this pantry that's all done and, all the kid stuff is sorted out, and you just can't even shower because your kids have colic and you can't sleep and you're all alone, like it can be a lonely place, And so recognizing the pressures of that. And I think that's where God comes in, because he really helps guide me in knowing like what is the truth here and what isn't, right? And where is my time and investment going to lie in, and what isn't it, you know? So
Yeah.
I think naming the past and then also working towards fixing some of those things in the future. And the one thing I will say that I really love about you and your leadership is I feel like you have done a beautiful job when there's being concerns, like bringing them out into the light. I feel like I've noticed that many times where even the Easter service, right? Like you're talking about the role of women and that this being a concern for a lot of women in church, right? Like, where do I fit in all of this? That could be really confusing as a Christian, right? And you name it and you call it out and you bring it into the light, right? You help people to understand. You've done that with gender inequality. You've done that with racial inequality. There's a lot of things that have come out, right? Where we learn and grow and you name that. I think that's so wonderful.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Oh boy, it's really important.
Yeah, it is.
It's important to us. I mean, if we want to talk about what it means to be a follower of Jesus, like it's we are all human. We're all, we're all equal. And I wonder if we could talk a bit about, because it's one thing to say it, like, yeah, okay, we're all equal and we should be all equal. We need to make some change. But I think sometimes we don't know what to do. Like really, even if we agree to that, which I hope people do. I sure hope they do. And so for me, one of the things that's been really important is, as you say, to acknowledge it, to be aware of it. And when you're aware of it, all of a sudden you start seeing it. So here would be an example for me. My guess is, unfortunately, you probably have way more examples because you will be even more aware of it than I can be, though I'm trying as hard as I can. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. But like, I'd read something recently about how sometimes when maybe women aren't represented around the table as much as we would like, especially in those situations, sometimes their voices aren't heard. And I was at a meeting, I'm not going to name where or when, but it was like, oh my gosh, people aren't hearing what this incredible, brilliant individual has to say. And so I didn't make a big deal about it then. For whatever reason, I didn't feel like right there, but I just made sure that, can we circle back? Because I think this person had something that was really, really helpful. I don't know if we heard it, right? And it was just like the temperature in the room just changed. And this person just like lit up. Like it was so awesome. It was so awesome. But everybody else heard it differently. Now, I dream of the day where I don't need to do that or shouldn't have to. But for me, what was really empowering was being aware of it and then actually doing something about it. And I think, so what are some of the things, that as you think about women in the workplace and how we can really try to develop more equality in our leadership together? What are some of those kinds of things where just maybe watch for this, not only watch for this, but maybe here's something that we can do, that because it's us together naming and changing and bringing about this kind of impact.
That's a beautiful example you just gave. And I think you gave like a wonderful kind of footprint for some of the things that are really needed. And you highlighted the importance of men, and men's role in changing a lot of the experiences of women, because we can't do it on our own, right? And some voices are heard much louder than others around specific issues. And so when it's just women leading the way in that, some people can't hear that, And so the fact that you created space for that person and acknowledge that they have something important to say, that they're deserving of being there, and they need space to be able to do that, and you created that space for them. That's the type of thing we need in all spaces, and that where women, their voice is valued, their opinions are valued, and that they're welcome at the table. And this makes me think about Alpha very much, because if you haven't been in Alpha, you should, because it's amazing. But the one thing I loved so much about Alpha was this focus on that each of us are given gifts. And if that's the foundation of Christianity, and then you have a whole set of people that aren't included in conversations or in meetings or developing things, all of those gifts are lost, right? If we all come with something important, then you have to understand that's valuable, right? And so if certain people their gifts can't shine, then there's other people's jobs is creating space for them to glow, And I think that's the role, a significant role of men, of just being able to notice those things in those spaces like you did. And then also recognizing the experiences of women and listen, right? Just be open to hearing what women have gone through. And that doesn't mean that you personally did something wrong, but there are systems in place that kind of put men at a different spot.
Yeah.
Like if we're all on a track,
Yeah.
you know, just because you're born a certain way, you're ahead of the line. And there's a lot of discrepancies in that, whether you're a certain ethnicity, you're a certain religion, you're a certain gender, right?
Yeah.
Like there's ways in which our world is set up that's not fair, right? That's definitely not in the view of God. And that it's our job to be able to create a more equal playing field. But we can't know if something's broken if we don't listen, right? And those conversations sometimes are really hard to have. And they can feel really uncomfortable, but they're important because that's where healing comes, right? And that's where real change comes out of. And so there's so many different examples that women have shared along the way. But I think the big piece in all of that is just being able to listen, to grow yourself, and to be committed to being part of the change, right? And if you stumble or fall along the way, we all make mistakes, right?
Yeah.
You learn from it.
Grace,
you
we're
step
back to grace
up.
again, aren't we?
There you
For
go.
sure. Yeah.
Exactly.
No, I totally agree.
Exactly.
Yeah. Because I think sometimes people can be afraid to say the wrong thing or ask the, and just, any effort is better than no effort for sure, right? And people will see that. And the idea of listening, I think that you're onto something there. You know what I mean? Like, because we don't really understand what someone's been through until we stop to listen. And sometimes we can listen proactively by asking good questions, right? And so even just from your own experience, let's say you're in a week or a particular day where, you know what, everything has kind of fallen off the rails, and it is, and you could use some support, you could use some grace, you could use some love, you could use some understanding. What would be some of the questions that someone could ask you to try to hear about that, to try to listen for that, and then respond in whatever way? Sometimes listening is enough, actually, but sometimes there's something to do as well as you listen. But what would be even the questions that someone could ask you that would be helpful?
I can tell you something very specific to my own relationship with my husband. And I don't know if all men are this way, but he wants to fix things. And that's not what I need, right? And so I don't know if that's just how men and women are different.
Well, there's a book, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus.
Yeah.
And it's long, it's an old book, but that's exactly at the core of that book.
We're different in a lot of ways.
Sure.
We have different gifts, right?
Yeah.
Like, and that's the beautiful thing. But, I think a really important question, and I try to do this with a lot of people, is, are you needing me just to listen right now? Or is there something I can do to help you? And so that really sets the stage to be able to have an understanding of, am I just needing to get out what's on my heart out of my body? Do I just need to complain? Do I just need to think out loud? Or am I really coming to you because I need your advice, I need your guidance, or I need you to help me fix this? Those are two very different conversations, right?
That's really good.
And women process things in a very different way, and sometimes we just need an emotional support, and that we don't need saving. We just need to be able to process what's going on. And so that's a big one for me. Like, do you just need me to listen, or are you wanting me to help in some way? And if the answer is I want you to help in some way, then how am I best to help you? What is it that you need from me? Don't just make assumptions that I want you to fix something. I always say this to him because that's where he jumps to, right? Like, how am I going to fix this for you?
Yeah.
Oh,
I totally really. I just can't hear this and not have Brian be the only one under the bus here. So this, I think it is. I think there is. I hate to stereotype, but I think there often is. Like, I know, for sure, a temptation as a man to try to fix things, whatever for whatever reason. So, I can't wait to go home and try this out because I'm so easily just moved to the fix and here's suggestion and
Well, and it works with kids too.
Yeah.
Like, we as parents, I think we don't want our kids to be in pain. We don't want them to go through hardship. But sometimes they just want to talk about what's going on, and they don't want us to interfere.
Yeah.
They want to deal with it on their own.
Yeah.
You know, I don't want to hear what mom thinks about that. I just want to tell you what happened at school today, you know? So I've tried to really implement that in all areas of my life, and I have found it to be really successful. But I think something else too is that being really present, and you don't have to say anything, but just being there and say, I care about what you're going through. Do you want to talk to me about it? And just being open to hearing what they have to say and to sit in people's pain, right? It can be an uncomfortable place to be, especially if you don't have a role in fixing that or making that better for them. But I think women in particular and mothers in particular really need that to feel heard in their very unique experience, right? And to be able to not have shame around what might be coming out of that. And one of the hard things about mothering is that if you are having a hard time in that season of your life, which has been hidden away for a long time, right? You go through miscarriage or infertility, or you have a child and it's not going at all like you thought, or you have postpartum depression, anxiety, all of those things that can come along with that journey. Being able to talk openly about those things is a huge saving grace, I think, for a lot of people that are struggling. And just knowing that there's no shame here in this space with me, and that you can be honest about how you're doing, and there's no judgment here, you know?
Wow, that's awesome. Thank you. This has been so helpful. I know for me, I hope it's helpful for everybody that's listening and watching. And just as you talk about listening and being present, that sense of just not you're not alone when someone's with you. You talk about God being with you earlier, but people can also be with you through listening and being present, and that can be sometimes one of the most important things we need. Yeah,
absolutely. Just not being alone, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Oh, thanks, Tasha. Want to close with a little good news, rapid fire, if we could here today.
I would love that.
Yeah, for sure. So, what's the best thing going on in your home these days?
Well, I was mentioning that I got into school recently, so that's been a really big thing in our family right now. You know, mommy's going to school at the same time that the kids are. So that's been really cool that we've been talking about. And I was just sharing with everyone before we came on, we're going to Disney soon, which is super exciting, trip of a lifetime. So we're really excited about that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
What's the best thing going on in your community, in your neighborhood?
Yeah, so a really cool thing has happened at my work. So I work at a location called Safe Center Appeal, which is a one-stop location for women that are impacted by intimate partner violence. All victims of intimate partner violence are allowed to come there, and there's services that are going to wrap around people. But women are predominantly impacted by intimate partner violence. So the majority of people we service are moms. And so the really cool thing that happened over the pandemic is that Peel Police has started a specialized intimate partner violence team, and they are now housed with us at Safe Center. And so now people can come and report incidences of domestic violence in an area that feels comforting, and with police officers in plain clothes, on couches, not in a regular police
institutional
station,
kind of
exactly, like in a more comforting setting, and that and then all the other services that are there can wrap around that person in support and love to help them through a really difficult time. So it's been a long time in the making. A lot has had to go together for that to happen. I'm really proud of everything everyone's doing there. So I think it's going to help a lot of people. I'm excited to be a part of it.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
That's very cool. Okay, last one. Best thing happening in our world today?
I think the best thing is that things are starting to open up, and that we're starting to be around each other again. Those simple things that we took for granted before in a lot of ways has changed. I think the pandemic, even for me, has helped me really, notice what's important in life, and togetherness and family and friendship and love is really what our life is centered around, and being able to come back to church, being able to see each other again. Man, it's been great. I went to a children's birthday party recently and just seeing the joy on their face to be together as kids, that's amazing.
Yeah. So, you realize how good it is to see
really,
people, to be with people, to
hug each other.
Yeah, for sure.
Sing happy birthday, those simple things we didn't have for a long time. So, and I'm hoping that kind of creates a change in our world to be focused on love and not so much on division.
Amen to that. Yeah. Oh, yeah, right on. Oh, thanks, Tasha, so much. This has been just an incredible conversation. Love to close with prayer for you, for other moms. This is a Mother's Day episode in some ways, and we know it'll be listened to and watched well beyond Mother's Day, but it just felt like a good day to hold up some of the things that we've been talking about today and want to pray about them as well, if we could. Yeah, cool. Gracious God, thank you so much for Tasha, for the beautiful way that she has shared today, her own experiences, her insights, and also the places where we're still working things out. And may that grace that we talked about be very real for her family, for all moms and parents and people who are juggling life and trying to make it work. May we continue to know that we are not alone, that you are certainly with us in all of this, and that we continue to work together towards a more equal society where all genders, all sexual orientations, all races can be around the same tables, the right tables, voices heard, all treated with mutual respect and love. May love continue to rise up in who we are and who you invite us to be. So for all of this and more, we give you thanks and praise, oh God. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Awesome. Well, thanks again, Tasha, for being part of the Good News podcast today.
Yeah, this is awesome. Thanks so much.
You're very welcome. And friends, thank you for joining us today. Pray that you've been inspired and encouraged, and maybe challenged a little bit too, and that's okay. God, go with you and be with you. Thanks again for being a part of our conversation today. God bless you. Well, I told you that we had the right person for this conversation. Isn't she awesome? I really love her honesty and just the ability to articulate some very real things. She was transparent, but also really hopeful. And so just want to say thanks again to Tasha for this conversation. I love that we got so real on how can we all together, male and female, all genders, all sexual orientations, all races, how can we be human together? I think a lot of things we talked about could really translate to some of these other conversations as well. How do we support each other? How do we listen? The idea of not having to fix things all the time, but to be present with people. All of this can help us as we, again, try to be human together on this Mother's Day. What a great day to celebrate the role of women both in our life, but also in our world today. So here's a little takeaway. Here's a little homework, if you will. Reach out to a woman who you know and acknowledge, appreciate, thank her for the role that she's played in your life, but also in our world today. And as we do, everyone's encouraged, everyone's inspired. It's all about good news. Thanks, friends, for being part of the Good News podcast today, the Good News family. Don't forget to join us on Instagram, Good News with Jamie Holtum. Hope to see you again soon. Until then, God bless you.